talented and brilliant people have walked the corridors of this amazing institution over the years. From Octavia Butler to Toni Morrison and James Baldwin, Ella Fitzgerald, Alvin Ailey, and Harry Belafonte, who graced the stage in this room of the American Negro Theater.
This place evokes great memories. It was a gift to us in our community to really try to find that space to reflect expressions of Black experience. I just knew that the environment and what I saw these young African Americans doing was a place I needed to be.
What is my Schomburg Center? I'm standing here at the Cosmogram, which underneath holds the ashes of the poet Langston Hughes. On the evening when this Cosmogram was dedicated, people began to empty out of the auditorium. A jazz trio struck up, and to my amazement, Amira Baraka went over and asked Maya Angelou for a dance. And they started to dance on top of the Cosmogram, on top of the ashes of Langston Hughes, and I felt what a fitting way to kiss the memory of Langston.
The Schomburg Center is a research institute and a library, but it's so much more than that.
There's something going on every day.
So many amazing people come here to talk about their creative craft, to share what inspires them. The Schomburg Center's collections help to tell stories even beyond our walls.
The Schomburg Center is here in this exhibition at MoMA, One-Way Ticket, Jacob Lawrence's Migration Series. We depend on the resources of the Schomburg to enable us to tell this story. Thinking about the implications of the past on the present is absolutely crucial for understanding the next steps, understanding what we have to do to go forward.
We today have the responsibility of making sure that new artists and activists, new scholars and poets know that this place continues to be a resource and a source of inspiration for the work that we must continue to do.
The Schomburg Center is knowledge.
The Schomburg Center, to me, is education.
The Schomburg Center is home, it is family, it is foundational.
The Schomburg Center is inspiration.
The Schomburg is with me in everything that I do.
Community, inside and out.
The Schomburg Center is us.
The Schomburg Center is you, and we invite each and every one of you to find your Schomburg Center.
Good evening, Schomburg family. How are you doing? Now, I know this room is full of theater people, so when we say, how are you doing, I expect a roar coming back. How are you doing? All right. Good evening and welcome to the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture. My name is Novella Ford, and I manage public programs here at the Schomburg Center. Also want to say hello to those who are watching on live stream. Thank you for checking in, and those of you who want to revisit this conversation, you can go right back to live stream the minute it's over and revel in all the beauty that is going to be tonight. Thank you for joining us for Theater Talks in celebration of the 50th anniversary of the Negro Ensemble Company. Cheers, applause. Tonight we will see the Legacy Leaders of Color video project featuring Douglas Turner Ward, and then have Mr. Ward in conversation with NEC alumni Barbara Montgomery and Allie Woods, led by Dr. Indira Edwaru, Executive Director of the Billie Holiday Theater. Now I know those aren't the only, yes. I know that those aren't the only two NEC alumni in the house, so NEC alumni, wave your hands, stand up. All right, all right. I'm sure we will be calling some of you all by name later on, but to get our program started, if this is your first time at the Schomburg Center, I certainly hope that it will not be your last. The Schomburg Center is home to a rich collection of materials related to the performing arts, including the American Negro Theater records, which, as many of you all know, the American Negro Theater is located in the landmark building of the Schomburg Center, and it's right downstairs. The theater still exists, probably not as it was when Sidney Poitier was in there, but certainly we still pay homage to that particular space. We also have the Negro Actors Guild's records. We have the Helen Armistead Johnson collection, which contains over 200 file folder level collections from the mid-19th century to the 20th century, documenting early dramatic actors, minstrel shows, vaudeville, 1920s and 30s Broadway production, on up through the Black arts movement and theatrical productions of the 80s and 90s. We also hold the personal papers of individuals in the performing arts, including Frederick O'Neill, the Alice Childress papers documenting her career as a writer and actress, the Ossie Davis and Ruby Dee play script collection, as well as the amazing Lorraine Hansberry papers. I certainly could go on, but I would not do our collections justice, so I invite you to come back to the Schomburg Center and visit our manuscripts, archives, and rare books, our JBH reference library, and or our photographs and prints divisions. They are the divisions that were responsible for the pop-up that many of you may have seen outside in the lobby. If you did not take a look at that while you were waiting, please go back out. It shows many of the items that we have in our NEC collection, but certainly there are about 200 boxes more that it only scratches the surface. Our librarians and archivists are top-notch and responsible, as I mentioned, for the pop-up exhibition currently on display. Also, you'll see photographs shown throughout the program that will be from our impressive collection covering the rich history of the Negro Ensemble Company. Now, I know I don't need to tell many of you here in the room what NEC meant to Black playwrights as well as actors, but NEC was an incubator and presented plays by writers from the African diaspora who wrote about diversity of the Black experience. Some of those influential playwrights who found a home at NEC include Sam Art Williams, Charles Fuller, Stephen Carter, Gus Edwards, and many others. And certainly it wasn't just the men. Black women dramatists also were at NEC. It included Alice Childress, as I mentioned before. One-act play String was produced during the 1968 and 1969 season at a time when Black women's voices didn't always reemerge didn't always come to the forefront. Also, we have work by Alexis Devereaux, as well as work by Pearl Clearidge and Valina Houston. The Schomburg Center is a one-of-a-kind research institution that's dedicated to the collection, preservation, and interpretation of the global Black experience. I like to say that our public programs are educational and sometimes entertaining, but always enlightening, and I hope that you use the information that you receive here at this public program or at others as tools to speak truth to power, as well as truth to those who are uninformed. Please save the date for our upcoming event at the Schomburg. October 19th is our open house, our fall open house, and it will be an institution-wide escapade through the many facets of soul embodied in the Black experience archived here at the Schomburg Center over the last 92 years. Our fall program schedule is available online at the Schomburg's website at schomburgcenter.org, as well as on Eventbrite, where many of you RSVP'd for tonight's program, and in our print brochure, which you can get outside in our lobby. Please silence your cell phones. Also, no flash photography or video. We do photograph and videotape all of our programs for archival purposes. And again, we are on live stream, so you can revisit this conversation soon thereafter. Next to the stage is Elena Chang, Associate Director of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion at the Theater Communications Group. She will introduce the Legacy Leaders of Color video project featuring Douglas Turn Award. Please welcome Elena Chang.
All right, how are we doing tonight? I'm going to start off with sharing just a little bit about TCG for the folks who may not be as familiar with our organization. TCG was founded in 1961 to foster communication among professional, community, and university theaters. Our work as a service organization includes liaising with hundreds of individual and member theaters and affiliates through programs such as grant making and publishing, advocacy in Washington, as well as global cultural exchange. Now, as we look towards national engagement to connect with the true breadth that is the American theater, we are deeply devoted to building a more equitable and inclusive theater world. Our Legacy Leaders of Color video project features 9 videos about leaders who founded theaters in the early parts of our movement. Their stories have paved the way for so many theater makers passionate about uplifting the stories and unique experiences of theaters of color across the country. So what we wanted to do was offer a glimpse into the impact of these theaters and their founders that have had on the American theater while honoring their immense courage and dedication across the challenges of the times. We want to thank our legacy leaders first and foremost. So I wanted to take a moment to just call out their names to be with us in the room tonight. In addition to the video this evening featuring Douglas Turner Ward, the other leaders featured are Lou Bellamy of Penumbra Theater, St. Paul, Minneapolis. It's Frank Chin of Asian American Theater Company, San Francisco. The late Miriam Colon of Puerto Rican Traveling Theater. Woody King Jr. of New Federal Theater. Muriel Miguel of Spider Woman Theater. Tisa Chang of Pan Asian Rep in New York City. Let's also get some love for Jackie Taylor of Black Ensemble Theater, Chicago. And Luis Valdez of El Teatro Campesino in California. I want to also thank some people without whom the project would never have happened. The Doris Duke Charitable Foundation and their Fund for National Projects. Former TCG staff members, Stefina McMillan and Ty Defoe, who led the charge in producing these videos. Our production company, Moped. Current TCG staff, Emilia Cachapiro and Gus Schulenberg, who have been instrumental in supporting the promotion and premieres of these films. Kevin Bitterman and Allison Whitehall also supported with targeted outreach for these events. Our executive director, Teresa Eyring, also a Harlem resident and great admirer of the Schomburg, as well as our deputy director and chief operating officer, Adrian Boudou, who is in the audience this evening with so many of our TCG staffers. Last but not least, last but not least, tremendous thanks to Erish McCall of Project One Voice, who really led the effort to make this initial one-piece screening turn into a three-city tour featuring the NEC's 50th anniversary and Mr. Ward's legacy video premiere happen. And of course, the amazing programming team that is Novella Ford, Kalila Bates, and Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture. And now, without any further ado, please enjoy this video on one of the founders of the famed NEC, the inspiring and wonderful Douglas Turner Ward.
Definitive, profound, and satirical, yes, artistic, generous, humane, as an artist and as a committed human being to better the human condition.
I was born on a plantation in Burnside, Louisiana, which is about 55 miles on the River Road area between Baton Rouge and New Orleans. And my first 6 years was spent there until my parents moved to New Orleans. I was precocious. You know, when I was taught the ABCs by my parents at 3 years old, I fell in love with words and ultimately language. My parents used to joke that I couldn't walk out the house without a paperback in my back pocket. And I would forget about what I was supposed to buy at the grocery store because I was so involved in terms of what I was reading. I knew in high school that I was not equipped to do anything other than something involved with athletics and my love of reading. So I wanted to go to the University of Michigan to become an All-American football player. And right away, I played on the freshman team and found out that I wasn't as good. At Michigan, I wound up going to the library more than I went to class. And I discovered politics, and I became radicalized. When I left Detroit, the Wallace campaign was already full force. In fact, I think that was the first time I heard Paul Robeson speak in person was at a big rally in Detroit. All of us who wound up, me and Lorraine, because Lorraine and I came at the same time, Lorraine Hansberry, and immediately we both got involved with Youth for Wallace. We were dueling on the street corners, all the different factions, the nationalists, the, Muslims and the radicals and the left-wingers and so forth. And the ferment of that period was wonderful. And I thought it was a great training. I tried to spice up the meetings by beginning to write skits. And that ultimately led me to decide that writing for a live public was going to be my future interest. But by this time, I was also interested in developing my playwriting, so I was studying acting at the same time. I had been in Raising in the Sun. At no time had there been an audience that was more than 10% black. I need an audience of other blacks.
I was a young, thriving actor, a wannabe actor in Philadelphia when A Raisin in the Sun came through. And I had never seen a play with so many black actors. It blew me away, sitting at the Walnut Street Theater. And I had to go backstage, went backstage, met a lot of the actors. This one and another one of my friends who's now not with us anymore, Lonnie Elder III, the two of them were very, very supportive. I came to New York, and as fate would have it, the first professional play I got was in A Raisin in the Sun, which allowed me to be together with my dear friends. That's how we met.
First play, Dave Alphonse, was inspired by my visit to Montgomery during the day of the bus boycott and the absurdity that I observed of the buses still running. Blacks were not riding the buses, but they were still running through our regular stops as if somehow we were going to get on. That image, that led to me eventually translating it into a satirical play called Dave Alphonse, where all of the blacks vanished. Theatrically, Brechian style, the play is done in whiteface. The play was too short at that time, so I had to have a companion piece. And I used a real-life experience to write a shorter piece called Happy Ending, which is also satirical, but in style a little more accessible. And I decided that I wasn't interested in addressing my plays to a general public. I was interested in addressing my plays to a black audience. That impact remained successful, and throughout our whole history, it turned out that our primary audience was 80% black. I came up with an article that finally was titled American Theater, ? For whites only. And in that article, I analyzed the position of blacks at that time. That article came to the attention of McNeil Lowry at the Ford Foundation. I then went back to my then colleagues, Robert Hooks and Gerald Crone, and ultimately came up with a proposal. And the rest is history.
The Denzel Washingtons, the Samuel L. Jacksons, all of the great, great talent that came through there. I was out there with my chest bulging because we did it and we created that opportunity, that platform for them.
Negro Ensemble Company was unmatchable for theater, period. There was no other theater in America or sometime in the world that was on the same level of consistency. The thing that really distinguished the NEC was that it was an excellent theater with high standards. Now, I learned my lesson artistically from music, from the jazz musicians. Charlie Parker and Miles and Sonny Rollins and the whole host of Monk and everybody else. They were exquisite musicians. The music,
yes,
is our dominant art form. By paying attention to its development,
yes,
and in love with its creativity, it became the foundation of my aesthetics. The decline of the Negro Ensemble Company was not because of its own efforts, but because the circumstances, the economic circumstances, the political circumstances changed. Ronald Reagan came in and didn't want to support nonprofit theater, period. And suddenly our budget went from $225,000 a year to $40,000. And of course our vulnerability was that we were dependent on state and national money.
I even said to him at one point, I said, you know, with all of this struggle, how did you continue doing this? And I'll give you what he said to me. He said, Gus, if this wasn't a lot of fun too, I wouldn't have started in the first place.
Excellence has to really be a consistent thing. And you have to really select the right plays, you have to select the right people, and bring all those elements together. Then you have yourself a theater company. And that's what's been missing.
And independence.
Independence, indeed.
See, Bobby and I, we were independent. Our decision was the last word.
That's right.
And there was nobody above us. So as I said, everybody shared in the success of, but we at the top had to take responsibility for even our failures. To be a playwright today really means a commitment to expressing yourself in not a dying art form, but an art form that is more difficult to be in considered mainstream.
It pleases me to no end, and I'm so happy that I was able to come down here and be with you guys to share this award with my dear friend, my brother, and the artistic director of the Negro Ensemble Company, Douglas Turner Ward.
I would like to accept this honor in the name of our dear departed colleagues and fellow artists who are no longer with us. Starting with the original company of actors, Moses Gunn, Francis Foster, Esther Rhodes, Robin Cash, Graham Brown, Adolph Caesar, Edmund Cambridge. The playwrights, Lionel Elder, Julianne Mason, our loyal supporters, Ozzie Davis, Ruby Lee, and Paul Wilson Jr. So it is not just me who deserves to be here. It is all of those people who made it work. And as I always tell them, and I tell you, is that the proudest thing is that we did it.
So before I introduce tonight's guest, I want to invite up to our stage State Senator Brian Benjamin, who has a proclamation to present on this occasion of the 50th anniversary of the NEC, as well as our conversation with Douglas Ward. Is State Senator Brian Benjamin here? Oh, here we are. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the new state senator representing Harlem. I got elected on May 23rd, 2017. And I'm going to be very brief as a Harlem hospital baby and someone who is proud to be black. I can't tell you how proud I am to be able to present this proclamation to such a great company. I couldn't imagine creating the Negro Ensemble company and placing it in the Lower East Side at that time. My brain is spinning with the vision and the greatness that is associated with this company. So I'm just honored to present this proclamation on behalf of Harlem to, who am I presenting it to? Okay. I wasn't told that, I apologize. Mr. Ward, please come up. On behalf of the New York State Senate, I am proud to present a proclamation This is an amazing moment for me, an amazing moment for Harlem. Thank you so much for all of your work. And I won't read it because you'll read it when you get home, but we should just give him another round of applause for his vision. Thank you.
I can see we can do this all night, every time Mr. Ward comes out here. So leading us through tonight's conversation is Dr. Indira Edwaru. She's producer, educator, scholar, and nonprofit arts leader. Yep, she deserves a round of applause. She has worked with institutions across the country, including BAM, New York Public Radio, NPR, the Billie Holiday Theater, and Bedford-Stuyvesant Restoration Corporation to develop and drive strategic content innovation, diverse funding streams, multi-platform digital expansion, and audience development. Indira's passion is exploring the complex intersection between community, performing, and visual arts and the topics of our time. Of note, she conceptualized and executive produced the first ever seminal recordings of August Wilson's American Century Cycle with artistic directors Ruben Santiago Hudson and Stephen McKinley Henderson. She also did the American radio broadcast premiere of Their Eyes Are Watching God, narrated by Felicia Rashad in 2012. And I remember tuning into my radio, was so excited that that was going to be on, and to hear people read the work of Zora Neale Hurston was going to be amazing. And we did something similar here 2 weeks ago where people read from works of James Baldwin. So I thank you, Indira, for the work that you did while you were at NPR. Also, she produced the NPR Presents National Tour, Water Plus, directed by Tony Award winner Kenny Leon. Indira Nwadru, also serves as executive director for the Center for Arts and Culture at Restoration. As I mentioned, we had the pleasure of having a conversation first with Douglas Turner Ward, and following her conversation with him, he will be joined by Negro Ensemble Company alum Barbara Montgomery and Allie Woods. So please first welcome Dr. Indira Nwadru and Douglas Turner Ward.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. What an absolute honor to be joined not only by this extraordinary visionary, but also by so many pioneers in American theater and Black theater who are with us this evening. And although Gerald Crone and Robert Hooks are unable to join us this evening, we know they are with us in spirit. As we do the New York stop on this incredible legacy tour, tonight's conversation will focus on the decade that led Mr. Ward and his collaborators to the founding of the Negro Ensemble Company. I want to take a moment to set the national stage, to understand the brilliance and the genius of the NEC's founding in response to one of the more tumultuous times in American history. We know that in 1954, the US Supreme Court ruled in Brown versus Board of Education, ending legal segregation in public schools, not that long ago. A year later, 14-year-old Emmett Till was murdered in Mississippi. That same year, local authorities in Montgomery, Alabama, arrested Rosa Parks when she refused to vacate her seat on the bus. And in 1959, Lorraine Hansberry's Raisin in the Sun opened on Broadway under the direction of Lloyd Richards. Which brings us to 1963, a watershed year in US history. The bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama, one of the deadliest acts of violence during the Civil Rights Movement, taking the lives of 4 of our precious little girls and evoking outrage across the globe. That August, 250,000 Americans converged on the nation's capital for the March on Washington, while several months later, President John F. Kennedy was assassinated. We know the New York race riots of 1964 were the first in a series of riots that ripped through American cities in 1964 and 1965. 1 year later, 1966, Mr. Ward, you were asked by the New York Times to write the article. But I want to just, if you could just take us back. We're looking at this time in American history, the 1960s. Some of it's not unlike today. Can you take us back? You were in your early 30s to the early 1960s. What was the sentiment of that time?
Well, the end of the 50s, of course, was when Raisin in the Sun was produced, right. Which I was lucky to be in. Lorraine being a good friend of mine. And so the ferment of that time had begun in the late 40s. Like, for instance, Lorraine and I came to New York in 1948. Wow. We were both involved in the presidential campaign for Henry Waters. And right after that, I was involved and Lorraine was involved in founding a radical militant youth organization called the Labor Youth League. Mm-hmm. And we were, at that time, dedicated to fighting the civil rights battles of that time. And it was a period of black militancy combined with black being attacked by the government and by the conservative forces of that time. So it was a very tumultuous period.
Mm-hmm. And in the 1940s, the Jim Crow laws were really rooted in the South, and you're coming from Louisiana, and the Great Migration had just taken hold. We were seeing surges. At the end of it, we know that 6 million African Americans voted with their feet, and they fled a terrorist South. So you were a part of that migration, coming from Louisiana to New York.
Yes, my aunts had preceded us. Mm-hmm. You know, like Black history, the first aunt who came to New York, then what followed is the rest of the family. You know, the brothers afterwards, another aunt. And finally, I left the University of Michigan and came here precisely because my aunt and my uncles had already come here. So we always go where the family leads us. And so that was the case. But we were part of that migration, which had started much earlier than the 40s, but it continued.
That's right.
And it was a post-war period, of course, with the black GIs returning and determined to get their rights after fighting Hitler in Germany and Japan in the Pacific, and now they were coming back to get their rights in their own country.
That's right.
And they were being, attempted was being to suppress them. And my organization at that time, most of the time we were fighting a defensive battle because every year a black youth was being lynched with trumped up charges of William Z, the Martinsville 7, and so forth. So we were forced with having to defend our rights, and at that time, the life and death of black youth who were being framed up on charges all over the South.
Our men were fighting 2 wars, one at home and one abroad.
Yeah, we had already done that during the war. Mm-hmm. And then after the war, we had to continue.
Mm-hmm. There's an article in one of our local papers here in New York in 1943 where soldiers came back and were beat with billy clubs by white men in the streets. When
that was often. Mm-hmm. Not just in here, but all over the country. Mm-hmm. That was happening, but we wouldn't take it. Mm-hmm. See, there was a new generation that was determined that we know the time has come for us to not take this laying down.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And so it's 1966, Mr. Ward, and you wrote American Theater for Whites Only, ? Published August 14th to be exact. And I'm going to just quote one sentence from that, or a couple of sentences. If any hope outside of chance, individual fortune exists for Negro playwrights as a group, or for that matter, Negro actors or other theater craftsmen. The most immediate, pressing, practical, absolutely minimally essential active first step. Can I read that again? The most immediate, pressing, practical, absolutely minimally essential active first step is the development of a permanent Negro company of at least off-Broadway size and dimension, not in the future, but now.
I left nothing out, right?
I know what to follow with that. But all of the activism that you were doing led to that perfect moment where you were able to articulate for not only all of those who are sitting here, but for the next 5 generations or 5 decades to follow, what the need in America.
The manifesto.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
The manifesto for all of us. Yeah.
And when you wrote not in the future, but now, we understand the urgency of our journey. We understand the urgency of now. MLK talked about the urgency of now. But tell us specifically, if you will, Mr. Ward, what inspired for you that sense of urgency for now, and also how you knew theater was the catalyst that could in fact answer that call?
Well, I knew my background as a militant had prepared me for the posture of fighting. And the time had come meaningfully in terms it had to be now. And theater was my place because I had been a youth leader here in Harlem with the Labor Youth League. At first I was head of the Labor Youth League in Harlem, and then I was the second in command of Labor Youth in the state. I've been one of the founders. And that had prepared me politically. I used to speak on street corners here, you know, during the days of fighting for civil rights, and also what the public may not remember is that W.E. Du Bois ran for senator in New York State, and we all spoke on street corners in his campaign. So my political militancy had prepared me mentally, but I had decided to focus on being an artist, being a writer. And I had to even ask the then city councilman, Ben Davis, whether it was all right for me to give up my political leadership to become a theater person. And finally, I felt guilty about it because there weren't that many youth leaders. But then Ben had said, no, if that's the way you're going to contribute, then it's all right. Contribute as an artist. You don't have to continue to develop as a politician or a political leader. So that's when I decided to improve my writing by studying acting and from then on, I realized that the focus of my life to carry out my philosophical, my political, aesthetic beliefs would be in theater. And that's why I knew that was my place.
So the Ford Foundation, they met with you, a proposal was put together, and they awarded a grant of $434,000.
$1 million. It was $1 million.
Wow.
But the law, they should only announce 1 year.
Oh, I see. Mm-hmm.
So the $420,000
was for that 1 year.
Was that 1 year. But we knew, I mean, I told them, I
You
said,
would
no, if I'm going to be responsible for creating any theater that has a solid foundation,
that's right.
It shouldn't be a one-shot deal.
Mm-hmm.
So I say it has to be
that
at least.
That deserves an applause.
Yes, right. It has to be at least 3 years. And they agree. But they should only announce 1 year at a time. So
which is 434 for year
yes,
one.
Yes.
Okay. And I did the calculations on that, and that in 2017, that would equal about 3.1 million. So that's, in terms of an investment, that's a seed investment. Tell us, as you look back to that, I know this provided a great financial base for NEC, but I also know there were a lot of challenges still in place to create something, an institution that could in fact be sustainable. So take us through that first year and what that was like building that foundation.
Well, the first foundation grant for 3 years, as I said, we agreed that, you know, and I insisted that the $1 million for 3 years allowed us to create a theater without having to go out and raise money from any other source. Right. And that was the secret of our success. The first 3 years, we did not have to wait to go out and raise other massive grants and so forth. So I allowed and gave me the opportunity to put together a foundation of a company that would be more lasting. And the problem with that was that I knew that after those 3 years, we had to develop a fundraising campaign that would make up for what we might not get anymore from the foundation. And the problem for the next 20, 25 years was that we were already vulnerable to the fact that we were dependent too much on state and federal money. And we didn't get the private money because, unfortunately, for black art, we don't have independent black wealth to make up for what we lose if we lose those federal and state money. And that's what happened to us eventually. But thankfully, it took 25 or 30 years before the deal was up.
And if I can add too, I think some funders are beginning to own the inequity of funding. So for example, working in Bed-Stuy, we know that for every $6.26 that's awarded to, and that arts and culture funding is given per individual, in District 3, Bed-Stuy, it's $2.44. So numbers and data are starting to emerge to illuminate that there is an ongoing inequity as it relates to not only organizations that are not mainstream and led by institutions and people of color, but also the audiences are not receiving.
Well, who's that?
Yeah.
Who's that? Because to find the demise, as I put it, of our company came, as I said, because of the vulnerability that I'm talking about.
That's right.
In that, see, mainstream theater has the independent wealth.
Right.
See, I was on the National Endowment Board
And so I know that the public theater gets only about 2 or 3% from the federal government. But they get 95% from independent contribution, from independent corporations, et cetera. And so if we don't have that sort of support or wealth from independent sources like that, the federal money and the state money is never going to allow us to be sufficient.
Before we have Ms. Barbara and Mr. Ali join us on the panel, you were 1 year in with NEC, Mr. Ward, and the world received the breaking news that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was shot and assassinated. Where were you at that time? Do you remember when you found that out?
I was on my way from my house, my apartment residence on 11th Street to the theater, which is on 8th Street, St. Mark's Place. And I always stopped, at that time I was a heavy smoker. I always stopped to get a pack of cigarettes from the cigar store on the corner from the theater on 9th Street. And the owner behind the counter was listening to the radio. And he came, and it was around showtime. Half hour is all actors, and you know, about half hour before curtain. And I was headed for theater and previews for Connery Harvest, Wallace Yankee, the great African Nobel Prize winner playwright, Wallace Yankee, Connery Harvest. We were in previews. And I was on the theater, on the way to the theater, and in the cigar store, and he suddenly announced to me, Martin Luther King was shot, had been killed. I had no idea the shot was so stunning. And I was so thrown, so I had no idea what to do. But I still had to meet the cast at that time, which was numerous. Connery Harvest was one of the biggest shows we ever did, about 40 people. You know, dancers and singers and you know, the whole work. And but I had no idea what to do. I didn't know how many people in the upstairs in the dressing room even knew it had happened. So there I was going up the steps to the St. Mark's Playhouse without suddenly struck, not having one idea how to react. So I got backstage, I announced to the company what had happened. Some had heard it, and then we had to deal with what do we do. And we finally came to the conclusion that since we didn't know what to do, that we would just follow through and do the performance, and afterwards, after the performance, then I, along with my staff and the actors and the stage manager, we would all then sit down and figure out what to do for the following days in terms of whether to cancel the performances from then on or not. And so we wound up, after that performance that night, where we had no idea how to react, we finally wound up saying that, you know, we would wait and we would continue to perform, you know, through the rest of the weekend that we were there. But that's where we were that night that it happened. And of course, you know, from then on, we all just would like to, the general public, especially the black public, in reacting to this tragedy.
Yeah. Certainly a moment in American history we will never forget. I'd like to now invite to the stage actor-director Ali Woods and actor-director Barbara Montgomery, both founding members of NEC. Please join me in welcoming them. being here with us. And Miss Barbara, you have a statement you'd like to share. So I just want to turn the floor over to you to take a moment and share
Thank you. See, if I were like Doug, I wouldn't have to read this, but I think of my life as vintage wine from fine old kegs, from the brim to the dregs, and it poured sweet and clear. It's been one hell of a career. And what is a career? In my near 50 years of doing, I feel without the significant amount of time spent at the Negro Ensemble Company with Doug, it probably would have been the career, but not as full, varied, and respected as it has been. His insight and belief in my instrument took me to places he knew I'd go before I did, okay? In recent programming, I spoke of Doug as my theatrical father and Ellen Stewart as the mother. But when it came to my listening and doing any needed research, his guidance, counsel, was for me more than just director, educational, my professor. Okay. I didn't work with Bobby. However, I felt him as part of me as an actor from watching his work. And any dialogue with Gerald Crone, a little here, a bit more there, was always meaningful. I sit here as representative, some of the founding women of the Negro Ensemble Company that laid such fabulous, wonderful groundwork. Frances Foster, a joy to work with. We had some good times. Esther Rowe, Clarice Taylor, Roxy Roker, and Hattie Winston, living now in Southern California, and so is Judy Ann Elder and Denise Nicholas. And my dear friend, Rosalind Cash, with whom I started on this path, Jersey Girls, and I'm still a pilgrim. Thank you. Thank you. Professor.
Beautiful. Thank you, Miss Barbara. And Mr. Woods, let me ask you, what did NEC mean for you as an artist starting out, and what does it mean for you now?
I'm here because of blind luck. In some ways, Barbara stole my thunder. I was going to list some of these people. she jumped in here and upstaged me. What can I say? I'm from Houston, Texas, and yes, Texas. Let's have it. And I had the habit of reading the newspaper every day because I always got some jobs from the local news. I would advise everyone here, not just simply the trade papers. Read the newspapers. At any rate, in one of the papers down there was a 4-line article about a Negro theater company being formed in New York City. It's just 4 lines. Yes. The key line in there was that it was at the St. Mark's Playhouse in New York City. Key why? Because at that time, for those of us who are old to remember and who will admit it, you could call the telephone company and they would tell you just where places are and telephone numbers and things like that. Remember those old days? Okay. So I called up in order to get the address and the telephone number of NEC, and called up, and someone answered the phone. I think it was Denise Nicholas. And I arranged in order to get get an audition to come up, because at that time, I had been up here before and seen Day of Absence, and I tried to get arrested in terms of audition, couldn't get arrested, so I said I'm going to go back to Texas and try to get arrested. And I started the company. Irony of ironies, I was producing and directing Day of Absence and Happy Ending when I saw this. So I arranged to come up, flew up on the afternoon, supposed to have an audition, and then fly back that night to be in rehearsal down in Houston and so forth. So I came up, got over to St. Mark's Playhouse, ran into Moses Gunn, who's out of Tennessee State, which I'm out of Tennessee State also. And we had a conversation. Then I saw a Douglas Center Award, and I zeroed in on it. He was moving around, trying to, see everybody and all this kind of thing. But I watched him. I said I watched his motions and his movements, and so because I realized that this is my shot. It's not a matter of making it here and not making it anywhere. I had to make it there, because that was it. And so I said, I just watched him. We were supposed to go into auditions. He was seeing everybody one-on-one. I watched his smoking rhythm, like so. And what happens is that you watch him enough, and so he got into a rhythm, and so like metronomic and everything. I said, okay. I had already picked out a piece I was going to do, and I tried to pick out something which was not the usual. It was not going to be, Finns, Romans, countrymen, and all that nonsense. And I picked something out of a play called In White America. Play an old tenant farmer, so forth and so on. Why? My attitude about auditioning is to pick something that is unfamiliar, that will force the interviewer to pay attention to you. And then I said, okay, I had that in mind, so we went into the playhouse, totally dark. He went up into the left side and so forth, so with his cigarette. I watched that cigarette. That was the key. And I'm down on stage and so forth with a spotlight around me and so forth and so on. And I stayed for a little while. I guess he thought I was trying to be dramatic silence and everything else. No, I was waiting to see the rhythm of his hand. Because I said, if he's got a cigarette up here, that's where his mouth is. And that's where his eyes is up here. My attitude was about I was going to focus dead on his eyes. Time I realized that was going to rhythm, and then I started the scene. And there it was. I jumped back into Houston, Texas. A few days later, Denise Nicholas told me that I had the job and to come on up. And I did not make it to the first meeting, which was on a Tuesday, when everybody else had arrived, because I had things to do in Texas. And I understand when I got there that some people were disappointed in seeing me. Why? Because those of you all from Texas, that people think that everybody from Texas is John Wayne. and expected John Wayne Woods to walk in the door with his pet alligator on one hand and his boa constrictor snake on the other. And then, of course, the time I step in is Mickey Rooney Woods. And I said, here I am. Where's the YMCA up in Harlem? I got to get there. And then we started like that. But I felt that this determined our history and our destination. And the luck to run into Douglas and Hooks and Gerald Crone, and the impact upon all our lives and careers. The founding company has been mentioned and will be mentioned later on in the memoriam and so forth. There's 13 of us, 7 women, 6 men. 4 of those men are here. 3 of them down here with me. There's one out in David Downing out in California. Yes. Moses Gunn, who's passed on. Some of y'all remember Moses Gunn, who played the gangster in Shaft. And the ladies have been mentioned, and that's just about all I have to say about
it. Interesting thing was, he mentioned Denise. What people don't know is that before Denise was selected for the company, Denise was my first secretary.
Yes, that's why she was on the phone.
So my final question, I'm going to direct it to you, Mr. Ward. We have the next generation of theater artists and activists, not only in this room, some may be tuned in online, others may tune in on the video online, but what advice, what statement would you like to leave with them when they look to carry the torch forward?
All I ask for the next generation is to strive as much as we did to be excellent.
Ladies and gentlemen, before we move to the memoriam, Douglas Turner Ward, Barbara Montgomery, Allie Ward.
My professor.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for your And tonight would not be complete if we did not acknowledge NEC's alumni. Where are you in the house? And now a brief in memoriam.
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have microphones in the aisle. We'd like to open the floor up to just a few brief questions. We do ask that you're brief and stay on topic, please, so we can get through as many questions as possible this evening. We also may want to turn to our alumni in the house to field some of tonight's questions as well. So if we have a microphone here, and is there one on? Okay. So we have one here if you have a question and would like to move up to the front. Mr. Ward, I think you answered all the questions. Any comments or reflections? We have a question in the...
Yes. Thank you very much.
Norman Bush, founding member of the Negro Ensemble Company.
So I can identify the alums.
Julia Sollingsworth.
Faye Me, stage manager.
Brenda Denmark. Elaine Graham. Ebony Joanne.
Peggy Alston.
Lee Hunkins.
Arthur French.
Glenn Turman.
Candice Tarpley. Did everything.
Carolyn Jones.
Michelle Shea. LaTanya Richardson Jackson.
Diane McIntyre.
Good evening, everyone. This is Carolyn Maillard here, and I'm glad to be an NEC alumni.
Dean Irby.
Joyce Sylvester. Surrette Scott.
Rome Neal.
Jerome Preston Bates.
Sir Lewis Jones.
I'm representing my son, Sean Rector. He lives in California. He's been out there 30 years, actor/teacher, but he did 5 years with NEC. Is Susan Turner here? No?
Bernard J. Marsh. Leon Denmark.
Sharon Capel. Karima. Hi, I'm Yvette Heiliger, one of the twins. I worked as an usher, and I worked in the office.
Joan Allen. Okay, Joan Allen.
Is Debbie? This is Debbie McGee.
I'm Deborah. Deborah McGee. Assistant to Douglas Turner Ward for 10 years.
Yeah. Most important person except me.
So let's give another round of applause for these NEC alumni. Now, I'm just gonna ask one more time, going once, going twice, going a third time. Any other questions in the house? Okay, so we're gonna come to you for a question, but we do have one more NEC alumni.
Oh, no, this is not a question. I'm proud to say my daughter, Bambi Jones, was with NEC in 1967, 1968.
Your question?
Hi, I'm Calandra Hackney. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. I have a quick question.
as someone who went through 2 theater programs for my undergraduate and master's, this work, this body of work that NEC did and other companies is pretty much omitted from American theater history. We don't learn about it in American theater programs, other than, you know, maybe a Miri Baraka play, but there's an entire body of work that's omitted from curriculum. So just what are your thoughts on that, and what can we do to possibly bring this back to, you know?
You have to insist on it. You have to insist on its inclusion.
Thank you.
Yes. You have to fight for its inclusion, or you're never going to get it.
I just wanted to say, my name is Bindu Kloko, and I went to Spelman College, and I went to another Legacy of Leaders program, and I really want to emphasize, I went to Spelman, this was our theater program. We read all Leroy Jones' work. We learned about you. The plays that we did, the anthology, the canon that we had at a historically black college was not the mainstream one. So I don't know, I just want to encourage people to look into HBCUs more as far as funding, supporting those institutions, because that was not my experience, and it was an honor to see you all because I learned about this history in the institution that I went to.
This is our last question.
Hi, I'm Joy Hooks. I am Robert's niece. And his family has come from Philly and up from DC to be here today. So.
And so before I invite the NEC alumni to come up to this, oh, now we all have questions, do we? Okay. We're going to take 2 questions. You're one.
Okay, should I start?
Go.
Hi, Doug. I was just very intrigued when you talked about how you were torn about leaving your position as a youth leader during the political strife of the 60s, and how you were embraced and even encouraged to channel that into your work as an artist. And I think that is enormously important today. And I wondered if you could elaborate a little more about the importance of the artist's role in our society in terms of moving the needle forward towards justice.
The artist is a citizen like everybody else. And it's their responsibility to, through that art, to make a difference in terms of what goes on in the real world. And that's all I can say, is that it's our responsibility. Not necessarily to preach at it, but to allow our life experience to inform our art.
Hello, my name is Aquila Shanae Barnes. I'm a playwright, and I've spoken to Ms. Barbara Montgomery about how impressed I am with the excellence of NEC, the history. So I would love to know from you, Mr. Ward, or any of the alumni, to speak on the structure in terms of from the playwright's perspective. What was the structure? What was the format? What made the playwriting process excellent at that time?
I'll let others explain. Well, it's hard to just answer that simply. I made myself, trained myself to be one of the best theater editors, I'll put it. There's a fancy word people call dramaturg. No, I call it theater editor. And
My professor.
I had to develop a relationship with all the writers that they trusted me. and that was helpful in terms of maintaining the standard of playwriting, from Charles Fuller to Lonnie, etc.
Did any of the actors want to answer that question as well? I mean, I think it is a unique opportunity to have been able to act in plays that maybe reflected a life story or those of that was familiar to you. What was that like? Oh.
What did she have? What was the question?
Yeah.
I was asking whether or not you all would like to also answer that question about incredible writing from these playwrights of color. You as an actor, you're being able to participate in this Negro ensemble. I'm sorry, can you actually hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, excellent. And whether or not, what was that like to act in these plays that may have been familiar to you? They were written by Black playwrights, getting into the theater, whether or not there was any special connection to the work that you all were performing while you were part of the company.
It was doing the work. It was saying the words. It was interpretation. It's what he and the directors that he brought to us gave us, and how we all communicated what it was we had to do. I mean, it was just wonderful. And when I say education, what was educational is that the writers that he chose were so bright and so right. And however he worked with them when it comes to the rewrites, because Miss Aquella, first time in my days, I just directed, that's the play I just directed, and was the first time for me to be with a playwright off and on for the last 6 years, as she rewrote. I had to call Steve for counseling. I said, Lord, and he gave me a quote from Maxie Glanville, his mentor, which was good plays are not written, they're rewritten. That just shut me right up. And I was with Aquella for the next 2 rewrites of hers. But however, it's about the words. It's about the words. It's about their abilities to have their vision, to go into what they want and to do their rewrites. And then we are allowed and privileged. Everything I own, everything I have came from the words I said and got paid to say them. Somebody wrote the words. And I have been blessed in that because I continue to move forward with the things I want to do. I'm still a pilgrim. But however, if I'm answering at all, it's about his for me and for the company, it was his choices and our interpretations and how we moved forward and the place we were in and how we were funded and he was so right on about it. No, I'm gonna let Ali answer also, because I can go on.
Okay. Are you done? Okay. Ironically, the words that come to my mind was written by the one white playwright we did, Peter Weiss. Peter Weiss was the author. You saw him up here in the picture and so forth, who wrote the first production, Song of the Lusitanian Bogey. And some of the video you may see online, so you hear Rosalind Cash singing the song that was composed by Coleridge Taylor Perkins. And I'm mentioning some names here because the focus seems to be just on the acting company, but there were founding people there. Founding administrators, Carolyn Jones is one. You remember Irene Gandy is another. Fred Gary is another. So there's also founding administrators and so forth. But the lines which come to me was the final lines that everybody stood up in the company, and we faced the audience in silence. And he said it like this: "And there shall be more. You will see them, many already in the cities and in the forests and mountains, laying in their weapons and planning with care the liberation which is near." And I felt that those lines, at least from that writer, sort of encapsulates my attitude. And when I went further, and when the original company went on its way in the 70s, and so I remember those lines more than any other. But all those writers, like Barbara was saying, and so forth, the body of work, the body of different lives, black lives at that we could display. And as Steve Carter and I have said, and Steve Carter now lives in Houston, Texas, for those of you all out here, you had to be there because it was like opening night every night. Some of us who perform and so forth, we lay off on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. You just phone it in, and then we get together on Friday and Saturday when the money crowd comes, so forth and so on, all that kind. But in terms of this, you had to be aware that every night Robert Ryan might show up, Stephen Boyd might show up, Bill Russell, the basketball player, may show up. You could not. Clint Eastwood's people may show up. Someone from Liza Minnelli's people may show up. So you had to be on top of this every night, and this body of work helped us stay on top. I mean, to do work about our own, to get the black work and black stories out here, to do work, to realize ourselves, to tell you the truth, just to do it.
So thank you all for your amazing questions, and thank you all for your answers. Before we close out this evening, I'm going to invite Enrich McMillan McCall to give us some closing remarks.
We have a message from Mr. Robert Hooks that Jerome Preston Bates is going to read for us. Thank you.
Good evening. This is an honor to read this message from Robert Hooks. On the occasion of the New York celebration of the Negro Ensemble Company's 50th anniversary, in this moment in history when arts institutions nationwide are truly an endangered species, and as artists are using their voices to do what the arts do best, create, change, and challenge injustice, the momentousness of Project One Voice, honoring the half-century landmark of the Negro Ensemble Company, whose mission was to train, enlighten, enlarge, and entertain with an international mindset, is especially significant and respect-worthy. In 1966, the Ford Foundation invited the three of us to create a proposal for what we envisioned as the perfect black theater company. That blueprint, passionately scribbled onto a tablecloth into the wee hours of the morning at the Orchidea restaurant. Orchidea restaurant would become the living, breathing reality of the Negro Ensemble Company. One of the signature stipulations, as a continuation of my youth-oriented group theater workshop, was tuition-free training in all aspects of theater. Not just the performers, but those special individuals who, unseen and too often unacknowledged, dedicated their artistry and energies to building and supporting this shining legacy. And thanks to the series of events, we have been able to research and create a list of over 650 alumni as a way of acknowledging the contributions and talents of every person in every capacity who was part of building what became both a cultural movement and a national treasure. It's easy to think that today we are merely celebrating what was, but humor has it that the Negro Ensemble Company, buoyed by those who have never forgotten their roots or their experience of it, is to continue into the 21st century with boldness of vision and spirit that will continue to resound, provoke, and nurture. Yours respectfully, Robert Hooks, co-founder and executive director, producer of the Negro Ensemble Company.
I have a few closing remarks. 2 years ago, Project One Voice began a journey to honor the half-century legacy of the visionary triumvirate who founded the classic Negro Ensemble Company. After 16 months of pitching this idea to organizations around the country, there was no interest. Can you believe it? A groundbreaking American institution that has trained and nurtured the finest creative talents in all aspects of the industry. An organization that produced over 200 new plays and has received 46 accolades, including a Pulitzer Prize and 2 Tony Awards. Astonishing. Then one day, my phone rang. It was the Theater Communications Group, TCG, informing me that Mr. Ward had requested me to produce the launch of his Legacy Leaders video. Eureka. Faith is a powerful thing. TCG and Mr. Ward agreed to combine the video launch and the 50th anniversary event. Almost immediately, we identified the 3 cities, Los Angeles, New York, and Atlanta. Project One Voice uses existing relationships with organizations and institutions across the country to make this historic event come to fruition. I would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge and thank our incredible team and partners for their brilliance and creativity in making this all come together so seamlessly. Beginning in Los Angeles, at the Ebony Repertory Theater, Ren T. Brown, Judy Ann Elder, Gail Hooks, Lori Marlowe, Harold Wheeler, Samantha Wheeler, and Hattie Winston. In New York City, the Schomburg Center, Kalila Bates, Novella Ford, Leonard Joseph, Hallie Morse, Bernita Robinson, and Sorette Scott. Atlanta is still assembling, but our fearless leader there is Pelham McDaniels at Emory University. Now, the producers for the screening series are Eleanor Chang and Gus Schulenberg. Thank you so much. And also, I would like to thank Diana Powell. She has been amazing through this process and getting all the messages to Mr. Ward and just being fantastic. I wanted to publicly say thank you to each and every single one of you and to anyone else that was involved in this 3-city tour in any way, form, and or fashion. The vision for the Negro Ensemble Company was and is brilliant. It paved the way for careers that have won every accolade imaginable in the industry. Thank you, Robert Hooks, Gerald Crone, and Douglas Turner Ward. Your legacy is enduring. But before we leave, I would like all of us to give a great round of applause to all of the NEC alums, because it is your sweat equity that made this legacy so powerful. Thank you. Thank you, yes. And my final note is, the Negro Ensemble Company represents pride, tradition, and above all, excellence. Thank you all for coming, and we will see you all in Atlanta. All the Negro Ensemble Company alums, make your way this way. Stay here for 1 second. Alums, stay here for 1 second. Oh, and we have a ticket giveaway for Old Settler. We have tickets. Hallie, is Hallie in the audience? We have a winner. Go see Old Settler at the Billie Holiday. It's starting shows on October 20th.
What the name?
We're just gonna pick a name. And Daryl, will you do the honors?
Oh, sure.
We're doing 2 tickets. Okay. The winners are Camellia Fly, a pair of tickets, and Bandu Kotoko. We'll email you this information. All the alums, stay this way. We're going to take a photograph with all of you. Thank you. Thank you and good night. Thank you, Galia.
I'm going to ask all the NEC alumni to make their way to the stage. Thank you for making your way to the stage so we can get a group photo. If you are unable to climb the stairs, we will make arrangements for you.
I'm moving tomorrow across the street. I'm not kidding, on 125th and Lenox. I've been
Please make your way to the stage.
I'm coming down to Mary Alice tomorrow.
All NEC alumni, please make your way to the stage. All NEC alumni, please make your way to the stage. Anyone who cannot climb the stairs, we will make a different arrangement. Hello, how are you? You're welcome, thank you.
Hi.
I never saw him on the bus, but out of suit and all gray. And then when he said, "Oh, what I knew who it was." Great to be here. You were wonderful. Great.
Okay, alum, we need everyone to face forward and stand shoulder to shoulder. Let's move in.
Towards the back of this.
Thank you. Actually, if you back up, I'll go ahead and push it. Thank you.